The mahogany dining table at my parents' Westchester home groaned under the weight of Mom's Sunday spread, prime rib roasted vegetables, and enough side dishes to feed a small army. The real feast, however, was the endless serving of praise for my brother Michael's medical practice, delivered with the same ritualistic precision Mom applied to her famous Yorkshire pudding recipe. "Michael just hired his third nurse practitioner," Mom announced to our assembled relatives, her voice carrying the pride typically reserved for Nobel Prize announcements. "The practice is expanding so rapidly, they're looking at a second location." Uncle Robert nodded approvingly while Aunt Susan practically glowed with vicarious success. Michael sat at Dad's right hand, wearing scrubs that somehow looked more distinguished than most people's formal wear, recounting his latest surgical procedures with practiced humility. "Pediatric cardiology is really taking off," Michael explained, cutting into his prime rib with the same precision he probably applied to tiny hearts. "We're seeing patients from 3 states now. Just last week I performed a procedure that saved a 6-month-old's life." The table erupted in admiring murmurs and requests for more details. I pushed my potatoes around my plate, half listening while checking encrypted messages from our security team about tomorrow's server maintenance window. Our platform would be processing $2.3 billion in transactions during that brief downtime, more money than most countries see in a month. "And what about you, Sarah?" Cousin Jennifer asked politely, finally remembering the black sheep of the family dinner conversation. "How's your computer thing going?" The pause before computer things spoke volumes. My family had collectively decided that my work existed in some nebulous digital realm that didn't quite qualify as a real profession, like an extended hobby that occasionally generated income. "Data Flow Dynamics is doing well," I replied carefully, using our company's actual name instead of the generic website business label my family had assigned to my work. "Still working from home?" Dad asked with barely concealed disapproval. "Sarah, you're 31. When are you going to get a real job like your brother? Medicine provides security, respect, a genuine contribution to society." I thought about the genuine contributions our platform made, streamlining supply chains that fed millions, optimizing financial systems that protected retirement funds, processing healthcare data that literally saved lives through faster diagnoses. But explaining algorithmic efficiency to people who measured success by stethoscopes and prescription pads felt futile. "What exactly do you do again?" Uncle Robert inquired, probably wondering if I designed websites for local restaurants or managed social media accounts for small businesses. "We built a data processing platform that helps companies optimize their operations," I said, knowing the explanation would bounce off them like light off a mirror. "Ah, like a more advanced version of Excel," Aunt Susan nodded knowingly. "That's nice, dear. Technology can be very useful for supporting real businesses." Supporting real businesses. Our Excel spreadsheet processed more daily transactions than the New York Stock Exchange, but my family had categorized it as a digital support tool rather than the infrastructure that powered Fortune 500 operations. "Michael's practice just got featured in Medical Tribune," Mom interjected, steering the conversation back to familiar territory. "They called him one of the region's most promising young cardiologists." The table showered Michael with congratulations while I silently calculated that our Q3 revenue had exceeded the annual GDP of 12 small nations. But Michael's medical journal feature would get framed and hung in the hallway, while my work remained invisible to people who equated success with physical offices and traditional career paths. "Sarah should consider going back to school," Dad suggested earnestly. "Maybe business administration, something that could lead to a management position at a real company. This computer hobby has gone on long enough." Computer hobby. I'd built a platform from my college dorm room that now employed 3,400 people across 16 countries. Our algorithms processed financial transactions, healthcare records, and supply chain data for clients ranging from Tesla to the U.S. Department of Defense. But because the work happened behind screens rather than in examination rooms, it registered as an elaborate form of playing video games. "The thing about technology," Michael added helpfully, "is that it changes so quickly. One day you're relevant, the next day something new comes along. Medicine is stable. People will always need doctors." I nodded politely while reading a Bloomberg notification about our competitors struggling to match our processing speeds. We'd solved problems that had stumped computer scientists for decades, but Michael was right. People would always need doctors. They'd also always need data processing, but that reality seemed less obvious to people whose professional success came with visible stethoscopes. Maybe after dinner we could look at some job postings together, Mom suggested kindly. I saw several technology positions at the hospital. Nothing too technical, more like administrative support for their computer systems. Administrative support. For computer systems that probably ran on infrastructure we designed. My phone buzzed with an urgent message from my assistant. Tim Cook's office called. Needs to discuss the acquisition proposal. Says it's time sensitive. I silenced the phone, returning my attention to the ongoing celebration of Michael's genuinely impressive medical career. Monday morning brought the familiar rhythm of board meetings, product development sessions, and strategic planning calls that had defined my life for the past 8 years. I sat in Dataflow Dynamics' glass-walled conference room overlooking San Francisco Bay, reviewing acquisition proposals with our legal team while the family dinner conversation replayed in my mind. Apple's offer increased to $8.2 billion, our chief counsel announced, sliding the updated proposal across the conference table. They want exclusivity on our machine learning infrastructure for their next-generation devices. I stared at the number, remembering Dad's suggestion that I find administrative support work at a hospital. The same man who'd questioned my career stability now had a daughter fielding acquisition offers that exceeded most countries' defense budgets. Microsoft's counteroffer came in at $8.7 billion, our CFO added. They're particularly interested in our healthcare data processing capabilities. Healthcare data processing. The same systems that made Michael's diagnostic work possible, though he'd never know that our algorithms helped analyze the cardiac imaging data he relied on daily. The irony wasn't lost on me that his stable medical career depended on the digital infrastructure he'd dismissed as a hobby. Tim Cook wants a personal meeting this week, my assistant Jennifer noted during our break. His team says the acquisition could reshape how Apple approaches enterprise computing. I pulled up our performance metrics while considering Cook's request. Dataflow processed 47% of all healthcare transactions in North America, 23% of global supply chain data, and managed financial operations for 6 of the 10 largest banks worldwide. We'd become the invisible backbone of digital commerce, handling everything from Amazon's logistics to the Federal Reserve's daily operations. Tuesday's family group chat brought updates about Michael's latest surgical success and Mom's Garden Club achievements. The conversation buzzed with excitement about Michael's upcoming presentation at a pediatric cardiology conference, while carefully avoiding any mention of my work, as if acknowledging it might legitimize what they saw as an extended phase of digital experimentation. So proud of Michael. Mom texted, sharing a photo of his conference acceptance letter. Real recognition for real achievement. I screenshot the message while reviewing our latest client list. Nike, Tesla, JPMorgan Chase, and the European Central Bank. But Michael's medical conference would get family celebration, while our platform handling the European Union's financial infrastructure remained too abstract for kitchen table conversations. Wednesday brought a call from Reed Hastings at Netflix, followed by meetings with executives from Google, Amazon, and Goldman Sachs, all wanting to understand how our data processing platform had achieved speeds that competitors called physically impossible. The conversations covered quantum computing applications, artificial intelligence integration, and the mathematical breakthroughs that had revolutionized how digital information moved through global networks. Your algorithms have essentially redefined what we thought was achievable, Google's chief technology officer explained during our video conference. We're not just talking about incremental improvements. You've solved problems that have stumped computer scientists for decades. I nodded professionally while thinking about Sunday's dinner, where Uncle Robert had compared my work to a more advanced version of Excel. Thursday evening brought another family call. Dad, using his patient education voice, wanted to discuss my career trajectory and the importance of building something tangible, like Michael's medical practice. Sarah, I've been thinking about our conversation, he began earnestly. Technology is fine as a starting point, but you need to consider long-term stability. Michael's building something real. A practice that serves people, generates respect, creates lasting value. I walked through our Palo Alto headquarters while he talked, past walls lined with patents, awards from the Computer Science Innovation Foundation, and framed letters from Fortune 500 CEOs thanking us for transforming their operations. The something real, we'd built processed $340 billion annually and employed more people than most cities. I found some interesting opportunities, Dad continued. The hospital's information technology department has openings for system administrators. It would let you use your computer skills in a meaningful setting, supporting real healthcare work. Our platform processed the medical records, insurance claims, and diagnostic data that made modern medicine possible. We'd reduced hospital error rates by 34% and accelerated treatment decisions that saved thousands of lives annually. But because the work happened behind servers rather than in operating rooms, it didn't register as real healthcare. Friday brought the final negotiation calls with Apple and Microsoft, both companies desperate to acquire the infrastructure that had made us the most valuable private technology company in Silicon Valley. I sat in our boardroom, fielding offers that would make headlines in the Wall Street Journal, while my family prepared for another Sunday dinner celebrating Michael's latest surgical achievement. The irony was perfect. They'd gathered to toast his success in saving individual lives while I negotiated deals involving technology that had revolutionized how millions of people received medical care. Sunday couldn't come fast enough. Sunday's dinner unfolded with familiar precision: prime rib, family gossip, and the ritualistic celebration of Michael's medical achievements. This week's highlight was his successful repair of a complex congenital heart defect in a 2-year-old patient, a procedure that had made the local newspaper and earned congratulations from colleagues across 3 states. The surgery took 7 hours, Michael explained to our rapt audience, his voice carrying appropriate gravity. But little Emma's recovery has been remarkable. Her parents called yesterday. She's already running around the house. The table erupted in admiring murmurs. Mom dabbed her eyes with her napkin while Dad beamed with paternal pride. This was the kind of success they understood: visible, immediate, life-changing in ways that could be photographed for holiday cards. That's what I call real work, Dad said, raising his wine glass. Michael's saving lives, making a genuine difference in the world. That's the kind of career that matters. I pushed my potatoes around my plate, mentally calculating that our platform had processed the diagnostic data, insurance authorizations, and hospital logistics that made Michael's surgery possible. The 2-year-old's heart repair had been successful partly because our systems had expedited her pre-surgical imaging analysis by 340%. Sarah, you should hear about Michael's conference presentation, Mom announced, pulling out her phone to show photos from the Pediatric Cardiology Symposium. Standing ovation from 800 doctors. That's the kind of recognition that comes from building something meaningful. Before I could respond, my phone rang with the distinctive tone I'd assigned to emergency calls. The caller ID showed, Tim Cook, Apple Incorporated. I'm sorry, I need to take this, I said, stepping away from the table. Sarah, we're having family dinner, Dad called after me. Can't your website business wait 30 minutes? I answered the call in Dad's study, closing the door behind me. Tim, good evening. Sarah, I apologize for calling during your family time, but we have a situation. Bloomberg is running the acquisition story in 20 minutes. We need your approval on the press release before it goes live. Through the study's French doors, I could see my family continuing their dinner conversation, probably discussing my rude interruption and persistent inability to prioritize real relationships over digital distractions. Which version of the story? I asked, knowing Bloomberg had been investigating our acquisition negotiations for weeks. The full story. $8.9 billion acquisition. Your background, the platform's impact on global commerce. They've confirmed everything through multiple sources. Your family's about to learn what data flow dynamics actually does. I looked through the doors again, watching Mom show Uncle Robert photos of Michael's conference presentation while Dad carved another slice of prime rib. In 15 minutes, Bloomberg Television would broadcast news that would reshape their understanding of everything they thought they knew about my career. Go ahead with the release, I said quietly. Returning to the dining room, I found the conversation had moved to Michael's plans for expanding his practice. Dad was explaining to cousin Jennifer how medical careers provided real security compared to trendy technology jobs that could disappear overnight. The problem with Sarah's computer work, he was saying, is that it's not built on anything solid. One day everyone's excited about websites, the next day it's something else entirely. My phone buzzed with a Bloomberg alert. Breaking. Apple acquires data flow dynamics for record $8.9 billion. The notification appeared on everyone's phones simultaneously, Bloomberg alerts being somewhat ubiquitous among people who followed financial news. Uncle Robert looked at his phone first, his expression shifting from casual interest to stunned confusion. Apple just... Sarah, this says Apple bought data flow dynamics for $9 billion. The dining room fell silent except for the soft chiming of news alerts echoing from multiple phones around the table. The silence stretched for 30 seconds that felt like hours. Dad stared at his phone screen, reading and rereading the Bloomberg headline while Mom's wine glass remained frozen halfway to her lips. Michael looked between his phone and me, his expression shifting from confusion to something approaching awe. Sarah, Dad's voice came out as barely a whisper. This says you founded Data Flow Dynamics. That you're the CEO. I am. But it's just a website, Mom protested weakly as if saying the words could make the Bloomberg report disappear. You work from home doing computer things. My phone rang again, Tim Cook calling back, probably to discuss the media interviews that would dominate tomorrow's news cycle. I declined the call, keeping my attention on my family's faces as the reality settled in. $9 billion, Uncle Robert repeated slowly. Sarah, you sold your company for $9 billion. Technically, I'm staying on as Chief Technology Officer for the transition, I corrected gently. The sale ensures our platform remains stable while Apple integrates our infrastructure into their enterprise systems. Michael set down his fork, his successful surgery suddenly seeming less momentous in comparison. Sarah, I had no idea. We had no idea. Why didn't you ever tell us what you actually do? I tried. Every family dinner for 8 years. You heard data processing platform and assumed I was building websites for local businesses. The Bloomberg alert continued buzzing on phones around the table as news outlets picked up the story. By morning, every major financial publication would be running features about the stealth startup that had revolutionized global commerce while operating in complete secrecy. Dad looked up from his phone, his face pale. Sarah, I owe you an apology. We all do. I nodded, accepting gracefully while noting that recognition had come from Bloomberg Television rather than the people who should have believed in my work all along.